Good morning, everyone. It is Wednesday, April the 7th, 2021. It is currently 9 a.m. Central Time, and I'm coming to you live from Victory Baptist Church, located right here in Ovalo, Texas. Once again, I'm here in the sanctuary of Victory Baptist Church. I'm here at the back of the sanctuary, have all of the podcast equipment set up, and we have a lot to do today. Yes, I have not been here for 2 days. I wasn't here Monday. I wasn't here Tuesday. My wife had a medical procedure on Tuesday. And I don't know how the rest of the day is going to work out. But the goal is to be here for a number of hours this morning, go home, get some lunch, come back, and be here a number of hours in the afternoon. Whenever I'm gone for a couple of days, I always feel like I'm drowning. I really do. I feel like I'm underwater, and I'm like, how am I going to get to the surface? Because I just feel overwhelmed with so many things that I need to do, so many things we need to talk about, so many programs I need to record. I feel like I'm like, a year behind, but all I can do is turn on the microphone and start working. So as always, let's just get a couple of things out of the way. If you're listening to me live via the Spreaker app, please, jump in, say good morning, say hello, tell me where you're listening from. If you have any questions, if you have any comments at any time, just share them. Don't wait. Just jump in at any time. I'll look over here at my screen, and if you say something that I think adds to the conversation, I will definitely share it. Or if it's a question, I will definitely do my best to try to answer it. All right. So at any time today, feel free to jump in. If there's anything you want me to talk about today, if there's a question, theological question, Bible question, it doesn't matter what it is. If you have anything you want me to discuss today, as always, email me at newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. And as always, what I try to do, those who contact me, your suggestion, your question always jumps to the top of the stack, and I will always try to cover that at first and foremost. I will try to get to it as soon as I can. But we have a lot of things to do, so let's do this. On Sunday, in fact, let me pull it up here. On Sunday, and I apologize, my voice is not super strong this morning. I'm going to take a drink of water really quick. I apologize for that. I hate when I go live on the air and my voice is like, nope, I'm not ready to cooperate yet. Give me about another 15 minutes before I'm ready, but I'm live on the air, so there's no going back. All right, I'm going to open up the Spreaker app really quick. On Sunday, I want to make sure I give the exact name. On Sunday, where was it? I got to find it. On Sunday, on Sunday, April the 4th, I did, for Sunday school, I used the Sunday school hour, and I posted it under the Theology Central podcast. Usually it would be under the VBC podcast, but I just put it under the Theology Central podcast. On Sunday, for the Sunday school hour, we discussed Christian kids leaving the faith. Christian kids leaving the faith. And the reaction to that was pretty overwhelming. There's a lot of things we discuss, and sometimes I am met with deafening silence, and I don't know how to interpret silence. And then there's other times I will I'm going to cover this. Maybe people will be interested. Like, I don't really perceive it to be anything major. And then that's the one where I get all of the emails going, that was awesome. That was amazing. Thank you. That was great. And I'm like, wait. What about the other thing I did? That was the thing that was supposed to be great. You never know how people are going to react, but that one got a lot of reaction. And as always, I appreciate you taking the time to offer any comments. It does give me, at least it gives me something to work with and go, okay, that was interesting. But so I posted that, got a lot of feedback. And I thought, at some point I need to turn on the microphone and we need to do some more discussion around that topic because there's so many layers to look at, so many different issues to consider. But I received a comment on YouTube that really caught my attention. And I'm going to use that comment to take this discussion in another direction, one that we did not really discuss on Sunday. I am appreciative to the person who left the comment. I think I think the person who left the comment, I don't think they really know me or really understand the way I approach things, because the comments just seem to be some almost accusations. There was almost like a way of thinking about me that clearly seemed to indicate they don't really know who they're speaking to. So, which is always frustrating, but we'll talk about that in just a minute. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go back to this idea of Christians leaving the faith. And according to some statistics, it's pretty staggering, the number of young people who are basically walking out of the church and in some cases never coming back. In some cases, they come back in about 3, 4, 5 years. But the numbers are very alarming, all right? And we talked about all of those numbers on Sunday. I'm not going to go back and go through all of them. Let's just say that it's starting to be, the numbers are so large that now denominations and articles are being written about it, and a lot of people are trying to figure out what is going on. And we talked about a number of reasons on Sunday. Again, you can go back and listen to that entire Sunday school discussion. It was during the Sunday school hour, so you hear me interacting with the people in the church. But we discussed it, all right? And then there was a lot of discussion after church in regards to that as well. So we had a lot of, on Sunday here at Victory Baptist Church, we had a lot of good talks in regards to this subject. So you go back and listen, but let's just establish this. A lot of young people are leaving the church. And I asked a question, are they leaving Christianity or are they leaving the church? There's a big difference there. And we talked about some of that, and some of the reasons some people may not be trying to leave Christianity, but they may have grown tired of the church. And we talked about that. But the point is they're leaving. Some are walking away from the faith. No question about it. Why is this happening? So we talked about all of the reasons on Sunday. I'm trying to keep myself from simply covering what we covered on Sunday, because I always know when I'm here on a Monday in the middle of the week doing a live broadcast, a lot of people tuning in would not have heard what we did on Sunday. So I always try to figure out how to get the audience all on the same page so that I can advance the conversation, and I'm not always very good at that. So if you missed it, go back. But let's add an additional question to this discussion. All right. No question, kids are walking away. No question, kids are leaving the church in staggering numbers. And it is pretty startling. And a lot of people need to question what is going on. Now, in some ways, we should not be shocked by it, because the reason we should not be shocked by it is I think that it may also be happening because of biblical prophecy. And we could have a discussion there. So it's startling in the sense that so many are leaving, but I don't think we should be shocked by it, considering where society is moving and considering what biblical prophecy has to say. So we could consider all of that. However, when you're looking at these numbers and you're trying to figure it out, is it possible that a large number of Christian young people at some point in their, maybe in school, maybe I doubt they're on a library. They're sitting there on their phone and they start searching on the internet for the history of Christianity. And as they're sitting on their phone, looking at the history of Christianity, or their tablet or whatever, or their laptop, whatever, device has them connected to the internet, they're sitting there and they're searching, the history of Christianity, and they go, oh, wow, there's a lot of bad things in the history of Christianity. It is horrible. It is disgusting. That's it. I'm leaving Christianity. How many young people do you think are sitting around searching the history of Christianity, find, and quote unquote, the ugly hidden history of Christianity, and once they discover it, they're like, that's it. I'm done. I'm washing my hands of it and I'm walking away. How many do you really think do that happens to? Now, I'm a little skeptical of the claim right from the start, because I don't think that many young people are sitting around on their mobile devices looking up the history of Christianity and finding things that they appear to find so shocking that it causes them to leave the faith. I really, maybe some go to college and they hear some horrible things and they're like, oh boy, I'm done with Christianity. Maybe that occurs. from my perspective, I've not seen a lot of Christian young people come to me going, you know what, I'm walking away because Christianity is filled with some horrible history and I'm done with it. I haven't seen a lot of that. Maybe it does happen, but I'm going to ask you, what do you think the number is? Let's say we're looking at 100%. Out of that 100%, do you think it's 10%, 20%, 30%, or just like, oh, wait, what? That happened within Christianity? I've never heard that. I've never seen that. I've never even heard it discussed in church. This is horrible. I'm done with Christianity. Maybe in some churches, they never study the ugly history of Christianity. Maybe that's the case, but I just think a lot of Christians are very aware of the ugliness and the horrible history that has occurred within the Christian world. I think we're probably very aware of it, but maybe I'm wrong. But we're going to consider that question today, and we're going to do so because of a comment that was sent to me. All right, so here is the comment. So everybody got the question? The question is very simple. How many kids have left Christianity, have left the faith because of the horrible history of Christianity? How many do you think that makes up? I don't know. You can draw your own conclusion. Again, I tend to think that the number is much smaller. I don't think a lot of people are sitting around looking up the history of Christianity. My issue has always been I can't get anyone to study church history. I can't get anyone to study Christian history. I've always been arguing that I can't get anyone to actually look at it. The good, the bad, and the ugly. I can't get anyone to actually study it. And now I got someone saying, well, the reason they're leaving is because of all of this horrible history within Christianity. I'm like, well, I'm glad they're studying it. That's wonderful. Now, it would be sad that they left Christianity as a result, but I'm at least glad that they're studying it. So I guess maybe that's why I have a hard time with this, is I just can't seem to get anyone to actually study church history. So now I'm being told the reason people are leaving is because so many are studying church history. It seems this really weird, like, what's going on here? So here's the comment, all right? Here's the comment. I'm not going to give the name of the individual. I'm not going to give the name of the individual because whenever someone sends a comment that either can be extremely rude, I just don't give the name because I'm not trying to attack the person. I like to look at what they're sending me and what idea. I'm more worried about the idea, not the individual, not the person, because I don't know the individual. I don't know the person, and I have no animosity towards the individual person, even when they send comments that are completely demeaning and very rude. I don't like to make it about the person. Now, I will say something. This is very important. Whenever you hop on YouTube or you're listening to a podcast of someone whom you do not know, in other words, you have no personal relationship with them, you don't know anything about them, just always remember when you post that comment, just remember the comment is going to a human being. There's a human being behind the microphone. There's a human being on the other side of that YouTube video. They're real people. So when you send the comment, just make sure you're very careful that within your comment, you're not making assumptions about a person whom you do not know. You come across a random YouTube video, you come across a random podcast episode, and then you immediately send off an email, or a comment. Just look for a second and go, am I making any assumptions about the person talking? And if you're making assumptions, rewrite the email, rewrite the comment to remove the assumptions. Just remember, there are human beings on the other side. I know social media almost dehumanizes people, right? We just see their name there, whatever name they go by. We just see a computer screen, we see a phone screen, we see a tablet screen, and so we just start typing things almost like we're not responding to a human, but we're responding to a computer. We're responding to something not human. But there are human beings on the other side of that screen, and they're going to read it, and it's going to impact them. And in many cases, you're making assumptions that may have no connection with reality. So just think before you sin, before you hit that post button, before you hit that sin button, because I think we all need to do better at that, especially Christians, because you have a biblical morality that tells you how to treat people, and so you need to follow that. But so I just feel that some of these comments are it just feels like there's a kind of an underlying assumption about me. And it's just, it gets a little frustrating. But in spite of my kind of frustration with the comment, I do respect the fact that the person took the time to comment. And I do respect the fact that they bring up a perspective that maybe I overlooked, or at least I did not bring up in the Sunday school. Now, I only had the Sunday school hour to talk about it, so it's only one discussion. And I think even there, I said there's multiple layers to this concept of kids leaving the faith that we have to consider, that it's not simple. I think I stated that a number of times. And so I made it very clear that, we're not going to be able to cover every issue, but I'm still thankful that they brought up a perspective that I did not mention, and then we're going to consider here today. All right, so here is the comment. And this is how they just jump right in with the comment. They don't say, hello, that I just listened to your episode. You gave some interesting thoughts. However, I think you missed a few points. They just jump right in. Here they go. When everyone has a box in their pocket with which they can access the sum aggregation of human knowledge and wisdom, why is it so shocking that kids are leaving the faith? ? Now stop right there. I am almost positive that if you go back and you listen to the, I think, over an hour discussion we had during the Sunday school class, I think I made it very clear we should not be shocked by it, right? We should take it seriously. It should bother us that the kids, but we should not be shocked. And I gave reasons why I don't think we should be shocked. One, look at where society is going. And two, I think it could be a fulfillment of biblical prophecy. So if it's a fulfillment of biblical prophecy, then we shouldn't be shocked. So already it was like, wait, did they actually listen? Did they actually listen to me? Did they actually listen, or did they just saw the title and just jumped in and started throwing comments? YouTube is the worst of that. People will throw out comments and it'll become obvious they did not even listen to the episode. That drives me crazy. I'm not saying that's what this person did, but it just seems weird that did I say that we should be shocked? I'm almost positive. I did. Maybe I did say we should be shocked by it. Maybe I did. I thought I made it clear that we should not use that term. Like we should be bothered by the number. It's staggering how big the numbers are being reported, but we should not be shocked by it, especially if we believe it's a fulfillment of biblical prophecy. All right. So I think it's very important that yes, people carry in their hands and their pocket. They have a device that connects them to the sum of human knowledge and wisdom. And I agree. Now, I will argue that most people sitting there with those mobile devices are not using it to access the sum of human knowledge and wisdom. I think they are using it for every other nonsensical kind of thing. I think that's one of the biggest issues is how much time is wasted on these devices for not actually accessing the sum of human knowledge and wisdom. I would argue that a lot of people are not using it for that, or they only look for certain kinds of information. They don't look for the total picture, right? So, and a lot of people block anything that goes against their perspective. Hey, in other words, if you're an atheist, you don't want to hear Christians, and if you're Christian, you don't want to hear atheists. And I think a lot of people just create little, echo chambers where all they hear is what they already think. I think that's also a problem with the way technology is used. But okay, I do agree that a lot of people can access the sum of human knowledge and wisdom. And I don't know what that would have to do with kids leaving the faith. I don't. There's a lot of people who've spent a lot of years studying a lot of different things with advanced degrees who are Christians. It's not just, this is almost implying, hey, dumb people are Christians, but once you are exposed to the sum of human knowledge and wisdom, then you're going to leave the faith. You see, if you're dumb, you're a Christian. If you become educated, then you're going to leave Christianity. And that's not always the case. There have been a lot of very well-educated people who have been Christian. There have been a lot of people who are not very well educated who are Christians. There are people from all walks of life who hold to different ideologies, and sometimes education is not always an answer. Now, yes, is it true that sometimes more educated people are less religious? There's some truth to that, but it's not always the case. There's always exceptions. But all right, so there's the implication here that the more you know, the less you will believe. The more you know, the greater chance you may walk away. I've always said that should not be the case, that we should study and study and study and study information that agrees with Christianity and that disagrees with Christianity, that we should never be afraid of knowledge because truth will always win out. Now, that in the pursuit of that knowledge, you may get confused. There may be times of confusion, times of doubt. There may be times of not knowing exactly how to handle information. But I've said a faith that cannot be doubted is a faith not worth having. All right? That faith goes through times of doubt, and that is an important part of faith. It's the struggle with having faith. We can get into a whole philosophical discussion there. But okay. It says they no longer have to depend on one guy at the front of the room telling them what's what. Now stop right there. They no longer have to depend on someone in the front of the room telling them what's what. Now, again, when I hear that doesn't appear, that doesn't sound like someone who knows anything about me, because rarely do I stand behind the pulpit and tell everyone's what's what. I tend to stand behind the pulpit and raise lots of questions and then tell you to go figure out what's what. I do a lot of times telling you to you go figure it out. You study this. Just look even at my Bible study exercises. You go look at this. You check this out. You look at this. I tell people all the time, I'll give you an example. When the Da Vinci Code, way before the movie, way before it became the cultural phenomenon that it did, when the book just came out, I basically told everyone, I told everyone in the church, read the book. I'm not scared about the claims. It makes historical claims at the front. Look at those historical claims. Investigate those historical claims. I'm not one to go, here's what's what. I am a person that will stand behind the pulpit and go, here's what the scriptures say. Now let's think about it and let's struggle with it. But okay. Now maybe it's true. Maybe it's true that that people no longer feel like that they need to sit in a church and listen to someone stand behind the pulpit and tell them what's what. Maybe that's true. I don't know if that's why kids leave the faith, but okay. All right, let's continue. Now here's where it all turns. They can read for themselves the bloody history of Christianity. So here we go. They can read for themselves the bloody history of Christianity, conversion by sword point. Stop right there. Okay. Now, they bring in that basically here's young people. They go to church because they have a mobile device that gives them access to all human wisdom and knowledge. They come across that human wisdom and knowledge specifically as it relates to the bloody history of Christianity. They find out that within Christendom, within Christianity, all right, just within the larger umbrella of Christianity, we're not going to get in here to making some distinction between denominations and theological streams and which one is true and which one we feel is apostate. That gets into a lot of theological discussions that usually people making this claim, they're not willing to make those kinds of distinctions, but that's perfectly okay. Within Christianity, there has been attempts by some in the name of Christ to try to convert people at sword point. There is no question about that. Now, I think anyone reading the New Testament would say, wait, we don't see any of that in the New Testament. We don't see Paul, Peter, any of the disciples telling them to go forth and make disciples by sticking a sword in their face saying, convert or we will kill you. We don't see that. It's nowhere in the New Testament. Now, we could argue about some of we could make some arguments about things that happened in the Old Testament, and we could get into a whole discussion there, how the theocracy operated, but there's no question about it that when you read the New Testament and Jesus tells his disciples to go into all the world and to teach, baptize, and teach, there is no even hint at going and doing it by force. There is none of that even indicated in the New Testament, and it would be hard to make that claim against the New Testament. Now, again, there are problematic issues in the Old Testament that should bother everyone. I've stated it before. As a Christian, there's things in the Old Testament that bothers me and troubles me. And if you're not bothered and troubled by things in the Bible, then you're not reading the Bible. I've stated that. But yes, this is one of the parts of Christianity that we have to deal with. What led to some within Christianity basically saying, hey, you convert or you die? What led to that thinking? There's nothing in the New Testament that would even hint that. So we would typically say that becomes a perversion of Christianity. That has nothing to do with Christianity. That becomes the merging, of church and state, which as a Baptist, obviously I condemn. And you know anything about me, I think anytime you merge the church and state, people die. That's one of the things I've told everyone in my church 1,000 times. When you study church history, here's what you learn. Whenever you merge church and state, people die. We don't want that. We don't ever want to support that. We don't want anything like that. All right, because you may think it's wonderful when church and state merges with your form of Christianity, but as soon as the other form of Christianity gets power, then you're going to be the one killed and you're going to be the one who dies. We've talked about that in my church countless times. So my church is very familiar with that aspect of the bloody history of Christianity. And I would hope all Christians are familiar with it. All right, but okay, so they learn about this, about the bloody history of Christianity, conversion by sword point, the anti-Semitic purging of all Jewishness and the 4th century to satisfy Rome is easily discoverable, okay? There's no question there's been some horrible anti-Semitic purging of all Jewishness by some within Christianity. We could even go to the writings of Martin Luther, who said some horrible things in regards to the Jews and called for some horrible things to be done. He also said that about some horrible things about the Anabaptist as well. No question about it. No question about it. We see a lot of horrible things done in the name of Christ, in the name of Christianity, in the name of religion. There is no question about it. All right? So, and it's easily discoverable. And you know what? I want them to discover it. I want them to hear it taught from the pulpit. I want them to hear it taught in the Sunday school class. I want them to hear it taught on church history podcast and Christian podcast. I want them to know it. I'm not afraid of them finding it out. I'm not worried about them finding it out. All right? Because there's a very key teaching within Christianity that's very much connected to this, but we'll get to that in a minute. All right? Or how about the brutal murders of people like Wycliffe and Tyndale for the sin of wanting everyone to be able to read the Bible? Now, okay, I don't know a Christian who doesn't know the story of Wycliffe and Tyndale. I don't know who doesn't know that story. I've heard that story taught in churches over and over and over and over. I've heard sermons about it taught in Bible college, Bible and seminary, Bible institutes. Almost everyone knows the horrible, tragic story of Wycliffe and Tyndale. I don't know people who don't know that story. So that's not hidden. Maybe within Catholicism, maybe it's not taught, maybe it's not, but I guarantee within the Protestant world, it's clearly taught. So there's some of the bloody history that is well taught within Christianity. All right. It says, so they were wanting the Bible to be read for people to read the Bible. And of course, they were going after what they were called these translations in the vulgar language. And they did not, and the Catholic Church did not support these translations. And people who tried to make the translations were ultimately killed for doing so. Or when owning a Bible was illegal. All right. We can talk about different times in church history where the Bible itself, people were not allowed to own the Bible. And we can get into, and a lot of this has to do within Catholicism and the merging of church and state and you could argue trying to control people. There's a lot of discussions. This has been talked about, again, within the Protestant church. These are pretty common lessons that have been told, but then they move on to telling a story about someone who, was horribly killed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play an audio clip of a discussion about this very case, all right? Before I even give you the name, I'm just going to play this clip. When they mention the name, I will come back in and say, okay, here's the person. They mentioned this horrible, horrible case and how they said a good Calvinist went after this woman and, well, they did horrible things to her. We're going to talk about this case. I think some Christians may not know this story. I think it's been talked about within Christianity. I've heard it taught. I don't know if I've mentioned this specific case from the pulpit. I've definitely mentioned situations like it, but since this is I think a story that may be a little less well known than obviously Tyndale, Wycliffe. That's very well known. Conversion at sword point and the anti-Semitic history that has found itself in certain parts of Christianity. These are all pretty well known. I've heard sermons about it, talked about on Christian radio. So those are not like, whoa, something new. But this one is new. So we're going to listen to this just brief audio clip, kind of give some basic history, and we'll expand on this. All right. So, but again, this person is raising a very good question. Hey, when people discover this bloody history, why wouldn't they leave Christianity? I'm going to argue that either A, people don't know it, and they're not really looking at it, and when they leave Christianity, it has nothing to do with this. Or B, a lot of people do know this history, but I don't think it has the effect that maybe you think that it would. And I think there are some reasons for it. And we've got to also bring up some other very important questions as well. But let's listen to this and let's see where this goes. There's a lot to cover, so I'm trying to cover all of this, right? But I want you to hear this because this is like the center of the comment, and I think this is a more unknown case, so I'm going to take the time to inform people about this horrible history so that you know, and because we're not afraid of this. Here we go.
The reign of Mary I was a very dangerous time for Protestants across England and the realm in which she reigned over. She is known as Bloody Mary for the series of burnings of Protestants at the stake that occurred during her time as queen.
Now, Bloody Mary. I've spent entire Sunday school lessons and sermons talking about the persecution that happened under Bloody Mary. We've talked about this in our leading up to the study of certain documents, the Puritans, a lot of different things. So the persecutions under Bloody Mary, even though churches may not go into specific details, they usually grab one or two horrible accounts of what happened under Bloody Mary, and guess what? They are taught. Oh, okay. Thank you. Someone said they don't know the history of Tyndale and Wycliffe history. That's interesting. All right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Maybe then, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I think certain things are more well known within Christianity than are not. I would tell this person, definitely look up the history of Tyndale, Wycliffe, look at what happened. And you'll see, basically, I'll just try to summarize. There were times within Christianity where the Catholic Church was like, nope, you cannot make a translation into what they called vulgar languages, into these languages. You can only use the translation approved by the Catholic Church, and if you try to translate it, well, there's going to be persecution, and in many cases, people were killed or burned to death for doing such. So, there's a whole long history of the Catholic Church trying to do that. We could go into great discussions. Why was it good? What were they concerned with? What, and you can assign lots of motivations to it, but okay. So that's interesting that someone did not. So I stand corrected. I thought that was pretty well known. Thank you for telling me that. So back to the person making the comment. If they hear this, thank you for bringing this up, because clearly maybe you're right. Maybe a lot of people don't know this, and I'm wrong thinking a lot of people do. Sometimes I have to be reminded. Sometimes my friends in Nebraska will remind me of this, that you sometimes forget that not all churches are like your church. You study things in your church that a lot of churches do not, and that is true. Sometimes I do have my perspective is sometimes kind of messed up because I just assume, well, what church doesn't study these things? What? Now, there's some things I know we do that other churches don't, but some of the history we study, there's some history we study that I know nobody will. And then there's some history we study that I think everyone does, and then I come to find out that that's not the case. All right, so we're going to back this up again. So they're mentioning Bloody Mary and the persecutions that happened under Bloody Mary. Now, there's a specific one. They're going to mention the name of this woman, all right? And wait, when you hear this story is horrific, 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 horrific. And we're going to go into some of the details. It's horrible. The commenter who posted the comment on YouTube, I think they have a little of their history incorrect about what happened, but trust me, even if we correct the history, it doesn't take away how horrible this story is. But I'm going to back this audio clip up, and here we go. And whoever made this audio clip, they have a dog in the background that's like crying, or someone's opening a door. I picked it up when I was listening to it. So if you hear that, it's not the sound coming from here in the church. It's coming from this audio clip. And yeah, sometimes when people make an audio clip, they don't realize that background sound can show up. I'm always so worried about that, but it's still perfectly fine. Just if you hear that sound, I don't want you to think it was coming from here. All right, here we go.
The reign of Mary I was a very dangerous time for Protestants across England and the realm in which she reigned over. She is known as Bloody Mary for the series of burnings of Protestants at the stake that occurred during her time as Queen, and John Foxe's Book of Martyrs documents these.
Now stop right there. John Foxe's Book of Martyrs. Now, way before anyone had mobile device, way before anyone had the internet, John Foxe's Book of Martyrs was a constant recommended book in churches. I cannot tell you how many times I would hear a sermon where read the Foxe's Book of Martyrs, the Foxe's Book of Martyrs, read the Foxe's Book of Martyrs, read it. I don't know how many times it was suggested, it was quoted from. I don't know how many times, and depending which Bible college I was in at any given time, this was a common book suggested. And that's before anyone had a mobile device. So a lot of people were given books and told to read books about the bloody history found within Christendom, and nobody was trying to cover it up. Foxe's Book of Martyrs, I mean, again, people listening, you can tell me, did you hear sermons quoting from it? Did you hear sermons suggesting the book? I would think almost every Christian has heard of Foxe's Book of Martyrs. I mean, to me, it's like just one of those, you become a Christian and there's certain books that everyone talks about, right? You know, you could talk about Pilgrim's Progress. You could talk about Foxe's Book of Martyrs. There's just certain things, like it just seems like it's in the air of Christianity. And Foxe's Book of Martyrs is a pretty common one, in my estimation. So the fact that he refers to this and refers that book talks about some of these horrible things that happened, just again shows you it's not trying to be hid within Christianity. And I would think a lot of young people had sat in sermons hearing quotes from the Foxe's Book of Martyrs and about some of these horrible persecutions. All right, so let's continue.
From this book we hear tales of bloodshed and terror which gripped the nation. Mary herself changed the religion of England back to Catholicism from Protestantism following the death of Edward VI, and required all in her country to support her changes with regards to the church. Those who didn't change suffered the ultimate punishment, a brutal death, being burned at the stake as a heretic. There was no separation between the classes with regards to the punishment either, with some of England's most noble such as Bishops Ridley and Latimer and later Thomas Cranmer being burned to death. Today we look at the tragic story of 3 women who, although not living in England, were brutally executed under the reign of Mary I in horrific fashion. So join us today as we look at the Guernsey martyrs, and to support our channel, please make sure to subscribe. Guillermine Gilbert and Peratine Massey were sisters who lived in the same house as their
Peratine Massey. That's the name, and that's the name that shows up in this comment on YouTube. Peratine Massey, I'm going to spell her name, Perotine, Peratine Massey, Massey. Again, Peratine, Perotine. Now, the reason I'm spelling this out is because whenever I teach church history in my church, I teach in a way that I expect everyone to have a notebook and everyone to write down what I'm telling them. And we make a joke. If you listen to my sermons, I sometimes make the joke about the Pope of Victory Baptist Church, which she's not the Pope, but she has these books. There's these big notebooks right down here on the table she sits at. Sarah Danzler, we refer to her as the Pope because she has these books where she has basically all of the notes from all of my sermons. She basically has them written out and saved in these books, and especially when it comes to the church history teaching. And so whenever I make a reference to a date or something, everyone will almost look back to her going, so what's the answer? She's got it written. Somehow she basically has a timeline of everything we've studied in church history. And so I always, when I study or teach church history, I teach in a way like I expect you to have a notebook and you're supposed to be writing this stuff down because I want people to be knowledgeable of church history, because this is what I always tell people. Ignorance of church history does not negate its influence upon you. You're just not aware that you're being influenced by it, all right? So you need to know this woman's name. Peretin Massey, Perotiine, Massey, Massey. I would strongly recommend that not just what you're about to hear, not what I'm going to read to you from this YouTube comment. I would strongly recommend you look up a number of accounts of exactly what happened, because whenever you deal with history, sometimes you'll have 3-4 different accounts, and sometimes the information may be a little different. And so I want you to just do your own research, because we're not afraid of this horrible history. We're not afraid of it. We should not be afraid of it, all right? And we're going to talk about why. I will argue, I don't know how many Christian young people have sat in church and then one day they're on their phone and like, oh, Peretin Massey. Oh, that's horrific. I'm leaving Christianity. Again, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think that's the case. But if it is the case, we're going to address, I think there's a philosophical problem that would emerge from doing that. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. So let's back this up just a little bit. Here we go. Well, I backed it up a lot, but here we go, because I want this all to flow together. Here we go.
In Latimer and later Thomas Cranmer being burned to death. Today we look at the tragic story of 3 women who, although not living in England, were brutally executed under the reign of Mary I in horrific fashion. So join us today as we look at the Guernsey martyrs, and to support our channel, please make sure to subscribe. Guillermine Gilbert and Peretin Massey were sisters who lived in the same house as their mother, Catherine Chaucer's, in Guernsey. Guernsey is a channel island found in the English Channel, not too far from the French coast. In 1483, a papal bull granted the privilege of neutrality to the Channel Islands, their harbours and sea, and were considered to be neutral territory. In 1548, a royal charter confirmed this, and the French later did try to invade nearby Jersey in 1549, but were defeated by the locals. Now, during the mid-16th century, the island of Guernsey was influenced by Calvinist reformers who came and travelled across from Normandy. Here the islanders would hear of Calvinist teachings and the Protestant beliefs, and from this, many people on the island were turning from Catholicism to Protestantism. Peretin Massey was married to a Calvinist minister who left the island to live in London for a short period in order to avoid any prosecution for heresy on the island by spreading the Calvinist teachings. This may have been during the reign of Edward VI, but in 1556, Peretin and her sister Guillermine, along with her mother, were arrested and charged with receiving a stolen goblet. The 3 family members were brought to trial, and in front of the judge it was decided that the main witness to the crime, a man named Vincent Gosset, had lied about the whole affair and the goblet. For this, the women were found not guilty, and as punishment for lying, Gosset had his ear nailed to the pillory, a stock which would be in public, and which someone would be strapped in by their heads. However, during the trial and the questioning, it was found that the 3 defendants and women had not been attending the weekly church services that they were required to do. It also emerged that their religious beliefs were different than those which were allowed by the church authorities. The court report said, "Master Dean and justices in your court and jurisdiction, after all amiable recommendations, please if you know that we are informed by the depositions of certain honest men passed before us in a manner of an inquiry, in the which inquiry Catherine Chaucer's and her 2 daughters have submitted themselves in a certain matter criminal, wherein we be informed that they have been disobedient to the commandments and ordinances of the Church, in contemning and forsaking the mass and ordinances of the same, against the will and commandment of our sovereign Lord, the King and the Queen. With this, the 3 women were all accused of heresy, and were accused of refusing to attend Catholic Mass, which was compulsory in the kingdoms which Mary I ruled over, and also they were accused of offending the commandments and the word of God. All 3 women were charged with heresy, an incredibly serious crime across Europe, and which carried grave consequences. The 3 women were then on the 1st of July 1556 taken to Castle Cornet. Castle Cornet in Guernsey was an important part of the island's defences, and stands on a formal tidal island of Little Rousseau. Throughout history it did see much action against the French, and during the Tudor period it was remodelled due to the development of gunpowder and cannons. This was where the mother and 2 daughters were held, charged with religious crimes. They would be held here for 3 days before being executed. On the 4th of July, Perettine Massey, Guillemine Gilbert and Catherine Chaucer's were all brought to court and tried for heresy. At this trial, the women argued that they had in fact been acting according to religious policies, but instead of Mary I's Catholic religious followings, they were in fact following the policies of the Protestant former King of England, Edward VI. Edward made large-scale changes to the Church of England, making it more Protestant following his father Henry VIII's break from Rome. He made England more Protestant, and when Mary I succeeded him, she changed all of the policies Edward had brought in, with the most important seeing England returning to Catholicism. The fact that the women had not returned to Catholic beliefs and teachings was incredibly serious. At the trial, the women's neighbours testified that they had been unwilling and defiantly refused to follow the religious ceremonies ordered by Mary I, and for this, all 3 women were found guilty of heresy and were condemned to death, and were sentenced to be burned at the stake. This was the standard sentence for the extremely serious crime of heresy. But there was one issue. Perettine Massey was pregnant. In pagan times this would have prevented her from being executed. However, barbarically, Catholics in the reign of Mary I saw it acceptable to kill her, along with her newborn child. Helier Gosselin was the man placed in charge of the executions of the 3 women, and they took place on the 18th of July, 1556. All of them were to be burned on the same fire. John Foxe would go on to record their deaths. He stated, "The time then being come, when those 3 good servants and holy saints of God, the innocent mother with her 2 daughters should suffer, in the place where they should consume their martyrdom, 3 stakes were set up. At the middle post was the mother, the eldest daughter on the right hand, the youngest on the other." So the 3 family members and women had been brought to their place of execution, tied to 3 stakes together, and were to be executed in one fire. Foxe goes on to write, "They were first strangled, but the rope broke before they were dead, and so the poor women fell in the fire. Perettine, who was then great with child, did fall on her side, where happened a rueful sight, not only to the eyes of all that there stood, but also to the ears of all true-hearted Christians that shall read this history. For as the belly of the woman burst asunder by a vehemence of the flame, so the 3 women were brutally burned, but were meant to be strangled before death, but because the rope broke, they were burned alive." Although we have to take Foxe's account with a pinch of salt, as it is Protestant propaganda, the horror continued. Allegedly, one of the witnesses to the execution, William House, then took the baby from the fire and laid it upon the grass, and the executioner Helier Gosselin then ordered it should be thrown back onto the fire. Foxe wrote, "And so the infant, baptized in his own blood, to fill up the number of God's innocent saints, was both born and died a martyr, leaving behind to the world, which it never saw, a spectacle wherein the whole world may see the cruelty of Catholic tormentors." Following the harrowing execution of the Guernsey martyrs, there was outrage at the fate of the pregnant woman and her child. In fact, the executioner was considered to be guilty of murder, with the fact that the baby had not been condemned as a heretic. The story of the Guernsey martyrs is a brutal one, in which one of the most harrowing events of the reign of Bloody Mary was played out in horrific fashion. It is definitely a story that should not be forgotten, for their only crime was them refusing to attend a Catholic church service. Once again, thanks for watching. To support our channel,
There you have it. Now, it's hard not to hear that account and not get emotional or get upset. I had the same emotional reaction when I was in Salem and went to the Salem witch trial museum, the Salem Witch Museum. Whenever I hear these things, it bothers me so greatly because it's just horrific and horrible when this stuff happens. And it always bothers me when I study church history. So let me make a few comments. And please note, I played that clip because that clip offers kind of a different historical understanding of what happened than what the commenter on YouTube stated. So that's when anyone makes any comments in regards to church history, you always have to look it up and verify. Because there's lots of accounts floating around, and which ones are true, which ones are false, and what's the truth is always something to figure out. But let's just make a couple of comments. This is so very important. That's a lot of people in modern times don't understand about the past. And this is going to become a major theme today through some other broadcast episodes we're going to be doing. So just stay with me here. All right. So this is very important. When we're in this modern time and we're looking back to the past, we have to understand what happened in its context. It doesn't excuse anything, but we have to understand it. In the past, there was a major problem. I think it was wrong. I think it was evil for it to occur, but it occurred over and over and over and over and over again. Whenever a particular area, region, country what they would do is take the religion of that area, whatever that religion was, whatever the authorities wanted the religion to be, whether it was Catholicism, Protestantism, whatever the case may be, and that became basically the state religion. And so what happened is the religion and the state, the civil authority and religion merged together. So what happens if you committed a religious crime like a religious crime of heresy, a religious crime of not going to church, or whatever the case may be, of false belief, witchcraft, whatever it could be, whatever. You just name the religious crime. In other words, a crime that the Bible or an action that the Bible condemned would be considered a religious crime, but it would be punished by the civil authorities, because a religious crime was also a civil crime because the civil and religion was merged together. We see this in church history over and over and over and over again. So if you come to an area and if you were a Protestant, but you came to a Catholic area, your Protestantism was basically a civil crime. It was a religious crime, and it was going to be punished by the civil authorities. In many cases, the church accused you and found you guilty of the religious crime, and then the civil authorities stepped in to punish you and to carry out the killing or the torture or whatever horrible idea they came up with, which in many cases there were horrible, horrible ideas. But you have to understand that's what occurred. It was the merging of church and state. It was the merging of church and state. That's why I am completely opposed to any Christian effort to somehow, quote unquote, make us a Christian nation. No, if you want to make a Christian nation, you preach the gospel, and as people become Christian, then the nation becomes Christian because the individuals become Christian. But you don't want it done by law. I don't want a public-led prayer in the public school. I don't want the Bible taught in the public school as an attempt to convert people. I want the two separate. I want church and state separate, because whenever you merge the two, I say this all the time in my church, everyone in my church, even the young people would know what to say. Whenever you merge church and state, the end result is people die. It has always played that way. It's always played out that way throughout church history. It is horrific. It is horrible, and that's exactly what happened. In this area, they were like, here's the rules, and you didn't follow the rules. Now, they get accused of something, Hey, you get accused of stealing this, but hey, you're innocent for that. So we're going to punish the person who lied about you. But in the process of getting information, it's come to light that you've not been attending Catholic church service. And because of the rules under Bloody Mary, that's heresy. So you're going to get put in prison, you're going to be tried, and you're going to be executed. And then the execution was horrific. Now, it is implied. Now, many Catholics don't believe that Fox's Book of Martyr is historically accurate. Now, of course, Catholics would have a reason not to want to believe some of the accounts in Fox's Book of Martyrs because they're horrific, and make Catholicism look really bad. But the point is, clearly, there's no question that Petra Massey was brutally killed along with her sister and mother. There's no question about it. They were brutally killed. No one disputes that. How brutal? How was it carried out? There is some argument about that, but this is a horrible, horrible situation. But we have to understand it. We have to understand it in light of that time. They kept merging church and state. So the church said you're guilty. The state came along and carried out the punishment. Horrific, horrible, but it played out over and over and over. And whatever religion was in power, then they would merge that with the state. When that religion lost its power and maybe Protestant came, then they would do the same thing. It's horrific. It's horrible. And I again would say the New Testament never supports anything like this in any way, shape, or form. And that's what we have to constantly keep telling ourselves. Now, we got to hurry because we're already at 55 minutes, but I'm going to read now from the comment. Petra Massey is a good story too. Look her up to see how good Calvinists rid the parish of a woman who committed the sin of staying home from church with two relatives because she was in labor. Now, a couple of things. Number one, it wasn't the Calvinists. They were being persecuted because of Catholicism under Bloody Mary. This is a Catholic persecution, not a Calvinist one. All right, the Calvinist area had tried to change some of the rules. So right there, and Petra Massey wasn't. She wasn't staying home because she was in labor. Seems she was staying home because she was like, we're not going to follow the Catholic rules. We're going to follow the Protestant rules. And therefore, we're not going to follow this because it sounds like she had not actually had the baby. She was still great with child when she was being tried and punished. So already there's some things there. They tied them to stakes, lit a fire, and when her dying body gave birth to her child, they threw that newborn back into the flames. Again, most accounts say that she was still great with child, and the fire, because of the heat of the fire and then falling, basically she burst open and basically the child came out. Now, there's some conflicting reports on exactly how that all played out, but okay. But she couldn't have been missing church because she was in labor. Right. So yeah, so there's some conflicting back and forth here. All right. All the while, her good Christian husband looked on. Now, I don't know if her good Christian husband looked on, but I know this: during that time, her good Christian husband could have done very little because this was the civil authority carrying out the punishment. So he could have said, no, I'm not going to do this, and they would have killed him. Now, maybe he should have done that. Maybe he should have fought it. I don't know if he was there. I haven't read, some of accounts I've read don't mention him. Maybe, we could get into that. That account we just talked about did not mention him. So I don't know if he was looking on or not. To say nothing of the obvious problems in your scripture, trying to squeeze 3 days and 3 nights between Friday afternoon and Sunday morning for a recent example. Hint, doesn't work. Even if you gave Friday afternoon as a day and Sunday down as a day, there's no reason Christian kids should check their brains at the church door. All right. So they go from Petra and Massey, don't completely have those historical facts completely laid out perfectly, and then immediately goes to the Good Friday thing. Well, if you listen to my teaching on Good Friday, I made it very clear that the issue is was Jesus crucified on Friday? we're not trying to figure out whether it was three actual, that's irrelevant. The point was clearly in the Bible, when he was crucified and died to when he resurrected, it was 3 days. The Friday is just set aside as the day to remember the crucifixion. Nobody's trying to make a claim that it had to be exactly on a Friday. It could have been a Wednesday, Thursday, however you want to count the days. The issue is it's a biblical event. Nobody, at least I don't make the claim. I've stated it before. I don't get into that whole fight. Was it a Friday? Was it a Thursday? Was it a Wednesday? Was he crucified? Yes. Did he die? Yes. Was he buried? Yes. Does the Bible claim that 3 days later he resurrected? Yes. Now, you can deny that as being fact, but the point is, I don't know why you would make a big issue about the 3-day thing. Most of us look, you want to remember the crucifixion of Christ on a Friday? Fine. Let's remember the crucifixion of Christ. It's a biblical event. Just like nobody thinks that Christ was actually born on December the 25th, but if you want to set that day aside to remember the birth of Jesus Christ, then by all means, let's remember that biblical event. The issue is the event biblical. Great. What day do you want to set aside to remember it? Fine, let's remember it. Because the Bible doesn't say, hey, it doesn't say on this day, it was this particular month and day when Mary gave birth to Jesus. So we don't get caught up in all of that. That's irrelevant. You want to set a day aside to remember a biblical event? I only care about if it's a biblical event. It's a biblical event? Then let's remember it. So clearly the person had not listened to me in any way, shape, or form because I've had that discussion a million times. Now, then they make this last comment. We're at an hour, so I'm going to have to summarize all of this here in a minute. There's no reason Christian kids should check their brains at the church door. I would say amen, amen, amen. No Christian should check their brain at the door. Any Christianity that attempts to create that kind of an atmosphere where you're to turn off your brain, set aside your intellect, to me is horrible and you should find a church that doesn't force you to do that. You should find a church that forces you to think, confronting you with difficult questions, confronting you with the difficult philosophical questions that arises within Christianity. A church that will confront you with the difficult questions that arises when you read the Old Testament. And there are some horrible things that happen in the Old Testament that should bother and disturb any person who reads their Bible. It should. And there's not always easy answers to deal with them. The story of Job is very disturbing and very hard to understand from a lot of different perspectives. There's a lot of horrific things that happen in the Bible, and every Christian should be forced to deal with it. So, now, let's go to this. Here we go. Are you ready? The question is, are Christian kids leaving Christianity because of the horrible history of Christianity? Well, if Christian kids are leaving Christianity because of the horrible history found within Christianity, I would have a lot of questions. One, you leave Christianity, right? You leave Christianity, so you're making a judgment. You're making a judgment. I'm leaving Christianity because look at all the horrible things that happened within Christianity. All right, so you're making a judgment that those horrible things were wrong. What made them wrong? What system of morality are you going to utilize to judge that behavior? What system of morality are you going to judge? Because now you have to question, where does morality come from? So let's say, okay, you read this history, you're like, man, I can't stand this. I'm leaving Christianity because Christianity is just a mess. Those were horrible things that took place. All right, that means you now are taking a system of morality, and you have to have a system of morality in order to look back into time and go, that was immoral. What made it immoral? What system of morality are you using? Because there's only a couple of sources of morality. It's either the majority of people determine what is moral. So if I look back into history and I see the majority of people supported that line of morality and killing people for those kinds of things, then it wouldn't be wrong because the majority agreed with it. If you say it was the minority that determines morality, then if I find a very small group of people, right, who say this is the right thing to do and they do something horrible, it wouldn't be horrible because the minority. So it's either the majority determines morality or it's either the minority determines morality. Which is it? Majority, minority, or the individual? So does the individual determine morality? Well, if the individual determines morality, then they could only determine morality for themselves. They can't determine someone else's action to be immoral because each individual determines morality. So if the Christian kid leaves Christianity because of the horrible history of Christianity, what are they using to judge it? Well, the majority determines morality. Well, that was the majority way of thinking back then, that religious law and civil law were merged together, and that's the way it was done. So did that make it, so can you judge the morality of the past based off the morality of the present? No, the morality of the past would be judged based on where does it arrive from, the majority of people or the minority of people? Which way? So if I look back in church history and I see a minority of people doing some horrific act, can I condemn it? Well, not if I say the minority determines morality. And if I look back into church history and I see a majority system, in other words, the majority of people agree with a way of doing things and they're committing horrible acts, can I condemn it? No, not if majority determines morality. If the individual determines morality, well, then those individuals were doing what they felt was right, and I can't condemn it because it's their individual morality versus my individual morality. So if you leave Christianity, what are you going to use to judge it? Where does morality come from? Christianity says, no, we judge the actions of things based off a transcendent morality that we believe come from the Bible. Well, the Bible in the New Testament clearly says, love your enemy. Love your enemy. All right, well, if I'm loving my enemy, I'm probably not having them killed, right? Right? I think there's no place where Jesus says, go into the world and burn people and kill people. None of that. The New Testament has no concept of that. Now, we could get back to the Old Testament, but the New Testament does not. So again, where does morality come from? So even if a Christian young person was to leave it, they would still be faced with the dilemma of how they're going to judge the past. This is an issue that is prevalent within our culture today. So many people in the present want to look at the morality of the past and condemn it as being wrong. What makes it wrong? You're judging the morality of the past based off your morality of the present. But how do people determine morality? Is it based off the majority of the people or the minority of the people? Who gets to determine what is right and wrong? So much of the study of history within a lot of universities is everyone sits in the university classroom. The teacher points out some horrific thing that happened in the past, and then everyone there condemns that as being wrong. And I'm the one in the class raising my hand going, wait. Professor, what system of morality are we utilizing to condemn those actions in the past? What made it wrong? What made it wrong? So where does morality come from? Someone tell me. And whenever I would raise these questions in any kind of teaching situation, usually everybody looks at me like I'm crazy, but it's a very relevant question to our society. Everybody looks in the past and go, wow, can you believe what people did back then? That is horrible. Well, you're judging the past morality with your present morality. But why is the present morality better than the past morality? The past morality was determined by what? The majority, the minority, or the individual, or what? How are you judging it? This becomes a moral issue. So even if Christian kids found this and struggled with it, for them to abandon Christianity so that they can judge that behavior as being wrong, they would have to establish the moral system they're using in which to judge it. And I'm telling you, there's no good system that can condemn the actions of the past, because those actions of the past were usually established by the majority of people who said that's the way things are to be done. And if you would have tried to insert a different system of morality at the time, they would have all looked at you and probably killed you, thinking that you were crazy. The system of morality back then was very simple. You merge church and state. You commit a quote-unquote a religious crime, you're punished by the civil authority. That's the way it worked. Was it right? I condemn it from a biblical perspective, because I don't think the Bible would ever call for any such thing like that, especially in New Testament Christianity. So that's the first issue. Second, anyone who's been within Christianity for 5 seconds realizes there's one teaching that dominates Christianity, that all human beings are depraved sinners, depraved, sinful, horrible acts carried out by human beings are carried out because of what is in the heart of every human being, which is sin. The reason people do horrible acts, religious people and unreligious people, is because of what we are by nature. When we looked at the history of Christianity, we see the good, the bad, and the ugly because it's made up of human beings who are fallen, who are flawed, and who are sinful. I will argue Christianity can explain why we see horrible things happening in history. We can explain it. If I throw out Christianity, then I'm like, well, people are basically good, but history is made up of a lot of basically good people doing a lot of horrible things. Why do good people keep doing horrible things? Because there aren't any good people. We're all depraved sinners. Christianity can explain the horrible acts. If you throw out Christianity, what's your solution to the horrible acts? Well, one, you got to have a system in order to condemn something as being evil. And number two, what's the solution? Education hasn't fixed it. Wealth hasn't fixed it. What's the solution? There isn't any easy solution because people are depraved and we're going to continue to do sinful things. People don't become sinners by sinning. They do sinful things because they are sinners. Some Christians even get this wrong. People don't become sinners by sinning. They sin because they are sinners by nature. That is what we are born as, depraved sinners. So when we looked at church history and we're like, man, some really bad things happened. Yes, they have happened, they are happening, and they will happen. Why? Because we're sinners. Does that excuse it? Absolutely not. Should it be condemned? Absolutely. How is it condemned? By a system of morality that is not determined by the majority of people or the minority of people or the individual, but by a transcendent system of morality that we believe comes from God's word, which I can open God's word and say, I think I can condemn that. I think I can condemn those horrible actions that occurred under Bloody Mary. I can condemn the horrible actions that happened under, you could go to from Calvinist. It doesn't matter which denomination or which theological stream. Typically, when they took over an area, they instituted the same kinds of laws, the very same kinds of laws, and punished people the exact same way because that's the way the morality at the time was established. Now, should some Christian have opened up their eyes and figured out, maybe I don't think we're doing this right? Yes, they should have. They should have. Some tried to fight against some of these systems, and in many cases, they were killed. But that's just the way. They didn't understand anything different. This area is now Puritan. Okay, here's the rules. Here's the rules. If you're going to live in this town, a Puritan town, you follow these rules. You don't follow these rules, you're going to be brought up on charges and you're going to be punished by the civil authorities. And that's the way it worked. That's what happened in Salem. That's what happened. Hey, you're being accused of witchcraft. You go to the trial. You're found guilty of witchcraft. Whether right or wrong, we can get into the accusations and how that all started because of some bored teenage girls. We can get into the whole discussion of everything that happened there. Horrible, horrible, horrible. But that's the way it worked. You're found guilty. What does the civil authorities call for punishment? Here's the punishment for these crimes. And then they are punished. Whether the law was just or unjust, that's the way it worked. That's the way it happened. That's the morality of the time. Now, what makes that morality of the time wrong? How are you going to judge it? I'm so irritated with that in our popular culture. We always want to look back to the past and go, oh, they were wrong. They were wrong. Well, what are you judging them on? You're judging the morality of the past based off the morality of the present. And in your system, morality is determined by what? Well, the majority of people determine morality. Well, the majority of the people at the time said it was right. So how can you condemn it now? How can you condemn it now? Well, the minority determines morality. Well, the minority of people, look at that situation. It was the minority of people doing that. So do you condemn that? I mean, you've got to think these things through, and nobody is willing to think these things through. All right. And then one last thing. All right. One last thing. All right. So we've got the merging of church and state. We got the merging of church and state. That's wrong. It's always wrong. It leads to people dying. Number two, very, very important. We have to, if you're going to leave Christianity because of these horrible things, you got to determine what system of morality you're using in order to judge these things, right? That's very important. Number three, human depravity, human depravity, human depravity. And number four, this is so important. If you're going to leave Christianity because of its horrible, bloody history, what are you going to turn to? Atheism? Are you telling me atheism doesn't have a history a very horrific history of the things that have happened under atheistic systems of government. In fact, I think I've got just one article right here. I don't got time to get into and read it. Let me see here. Yeah, it's called Atheism and Mass Murder. And Joseph Stalin's atheistic regime killed tens of millions of people. You've had atheistic regimes where people have been murdered and slaughtered and killed. So I could go find some horrible accounts of people being killed under an atheistic regime. So should you leave atheism? I could go to horrible things that's happened under Islamic law. So do you leave? Like I could find things that's happened guess what I find? No matter where I go within human history, Christian, non-Christian, atheistic, it doesn't matter what form of government, guess what I'm going to find? Horrible, horrible actions carried out. Why? Because that goes back to my point on depravity. So how are kids leaving because of the horrible history of Christianity? I cannot say if they are. I've never had a young person come to me saying, I'm leaving Christianity because of all the bad stuff. I've never had that happen. Maybe it will. Maybe it has. Maybe it'll occur. But I think even when Christian young people do leave that, I think in some cases it's just an excuse. They're looking for a reason to leave, typically because they want to do something that Christianity condemns. And so they find some reason to find their way out. But even if they are leaving for that, they have to, it doesn't solve their philosophical dilemma. All right? You think all of that was bad. So you're condemning all of those actions as being evil. What makes it evil? What system of morality are you using to condemn it? And then once you try to figure out your system of morality to condemn it, you realize it's going to be very difficult to condemn anything because you're either using the majority rule, the minority rule, the individual rule. So you don't have a system to condemn it. So why are you leaving? Okay. And then even if you find a system to condemn it, well, then here it becomes a very important question. Why do all these evil things keep happening within atheism, Christianity, Islam, you name it? Why do they keep? Oh, people are basically good. That doesn't answer it. So what? Oh, you're going to go back to human depravity, which is going to lead you right back to Christianity. So you got to come up with some explanations here. You got to come up to some explanations. And if you leave Christianity and you go to atheism, what about all the evils committed in the name of atheism? What about that? So there are things you have to understand. And then I'll just end with this. And I truly believe this. Every pastor, every church should teach the history of Christianity, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I don't care how bad it makes us look. I don't care. I'm a Baptist. I have taught my people over and over the horrible, horrible, horrible events that happened in Germany where the Anabaptists took over a city there in, I think they may have taken two cities. I've been to one of the cities. They took over one of the cities, the Anabaptists did, and they basically claimed they were getting revelations from God, and crazy things began to take place. Well, the Catholics and the Lutherans had to work together and ultimately take back the city, and then they took the Anabaptist leaders and they put them in cages, and then basically they died there in those cages, and they put them there to show everyone, hey, this Anabaptist stuff has got to stop. That a lot of people use that against the Anabaptists and the Baptists, saying, look at the craziness you did. I'm not afraid of anyone in my church knowing that history. If someone left Christianity or left being a Baptist because of that horrible history, so be it. I would rather them know the truth than try to hide that fact. In fact, give me 1 second here. I'm going to just look it up because I can't believe that I'm forgetting the name of the city. Yeah, I think it's Munster, Germany. I think is how it's referred to. I think it's called the Munster Rebellion. I believe it's the Munster Rebellion. Give me here. Yeah, here they are. Here's the picture. Yeah, here's the I think it's at the steeple of St. Lambert's Church. I think that's where the cages are located. I think they're still there. Maybe they were a long time ago. The cages of the leaders of the Munster Rebellion at the steeple of St. Lambert's Church. But yeah, basically, the Munster Rebellion, it was after the German Peasants' War, a forceful attempt to establish theocracy was made at Munster in Germany. And here the group gained considerable influence, and then they name a number of the individual people. But yeah, so they basically wanted to create a theocracy. They wanted to create a theocracy, and next thing you know, it turned into chaos, and people died, and it was crazy. That's a part of the Anabaptist history. All right, that's not good. That's not good. But it doesn't matter where you go, you're going to find horrible things in the past. You're going to find horrible things happen by different races. You can look at all the horrible things white people did. You can find horrible things that other races did. You can find slavery carried out by this group to this group. You can find land being stolen from this group to this group. It doesn't matter what form of government you find. Doesn't matter what race of people. Doesn't matter what religion. Doesn't matter if you find no religion. The one thing you're always going to discover in human history is the presence of evil, and more evil. Murder, lying, deceit, stealing, killing, raping, enslaving, misusing people, perverting justice. That's what human history is made. I've always said the study of history is the study of depravity. I don't care if it's church history. I don't care if it's the history of a nation. I don't care if it's the history of a race. You're going to find the same thing. Depravity. That's history. If history, I've said it before, the greatest proof of biblical teaching is the presence of the sinful nature in human beings. One of the reasons I cannot leave Christianity is because I have no other explanation for the evil in human beings, but nothing can fix it. Doesn't matter if the form of government, doesn't matter the educational level, doesn't matter the part of the world. Evil is present. And the reason, and Christianity gives me the ability to call it evil, to call it sin, and to condemn it. Leaving that, then I'm left with what system of morality in order to condemn it? Oh, you can come up with a system, but it's either a system of the majority, the minority, or the individual. All right. So there you have it. All right. So, yes, Christian kids should not check their brains at the door. They should not. Neither should Christian adults. Neither should pastors when they step behind the pulpit. Neither should Christians when they sit in front of a microphone. We should bring up the difficult realities that are present within Christianity. We should not be afraid of them. We should struggle with them. We should weep over some of the horrible things that occurred. By the time I left the Witch Museum in Salem, I was almost in tears because it was just a horrible thing that happened. It was just a horrible thing that happened. And it was, but there was lots of reasons that it happened. Again, the merging of church and state is part of it. But you know what? Even where you don't have church and state merged, you still have the state doing very horrible, horrific things. Right? So I just think it's very important. All right. We went an hour and 21 minutes. I apologize for going so long, but I try to cover everything as possible. Someone posted a comment, and I just want to read it. It says, they just looked up the original, they just looked at the YouTube comment and your response and how listening to this podcast, I wish all media had the ability to drill down into the topics like this. Thank you. This is when you get to hear the rest of the story. I have stated this forever. It has always bothered me. No matter what I'm trying to do behind a microphone, it has always bothered me that someone like me don't have the communication skills that others have, by no means. Don't have the technical expertise that other people have, by no means. Don't even have the equipment that other people have. Don't have a research staff. But there's been so many times where I'm covering a story or working on a story, covering an issue that I'm really drilling down into a lot of things. And I'll look at the media and like, why can't anyone do this? Everyone has the ability to do this. Everyone. The news media has the ability on any subject to spend an hour drilling at prime time, drilling down into one story, and not just try to give a narrative, but try to find the facts. They have the ability, but in many cases, people like you got to bring in two people from two opposing sides so they can start yelling at each other, and you got to have a narrative established. And I just wish more people would do this kind of thing. But it takes a lot of time to do it. It took me an hour and 23 minutes. Now, some could have done it faster than I did. Some people probably could have. But it takes a lot of time to go through the comment, consider everything that was saying, look at it from different perspectives, trying your best to do that takes time. And trust me, Most people will see that my podcast is an hour and 23 minutes and they won't even bother to listen. So that's what happens. So thank you for listening. Hopefully this is to be helpful. Hopefully it covers a lot of issues. And especially if you're just not familiar with the horrible history of Christianity, hopefully I've given you some ways to think about it. Don't run from it. Don't hide from it. Don't excuse it. And don't do what some Protestants. Well, see, that was Catholic history. That was Catholics. Those Catholics did that. Trust me. I can grab some. We could pull up some Protestant history that's just as bad and just as horrible. It doesn't matter. All sides. Why? Because all sides are made up of sinful human beings who lived at a time where everyone seemed to think the way to do government was to merge church and state. Thank God that we got away from that. And hopefully everyone in America would never want to go back to that, because it would only lead to people dying. Maybe not you today, but it would end up killing you tomorrow. And that's something we should never forget. All right, thank you for listening. You can email me at newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. I'll stop, give myself a few minutes, figure out what we're going to do next. I think we're going to do something. There's a new podcast out about something very important that I want everyone to be aware of. We talked about it about 2 years ago, 3 years ago, but now it's getting mainstream news coverage. And so we're going to talk about that, and it's a horrible, horrible, horrible thing that happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma. You probably know what I'm referring to, but everyone needs to know what happened, and we're going to talk about that in just a minute. All right, everyone have a great day. God bless.